the disciples of the Tao Order revealed slightly grim expressions. Could he be planning on killing Elder Zhu Yuan? Zhu Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly as he turned around to look at Yang Yi. What? Are you sure that you want me and the disciples of my Tao Order to stay? Yang Yi chuckled. I, Yang Yi, repay both kindness and enmity. I owe a debt to the founding ancestor of the Tao Order, so I will absolutely not act against members of the Tao Order if they don't try to act against me. Thus, besides you, all the other disciples of the Tao Order can leave. Zhu Yuan stared at Yang Yi as he said, Are you sure that you can make me stay? Bang! The cape on Yang Yi's back suddenly unfolded into a pair of wings, and he pointed yellow springs at Zhu Yuan. Want to give it a try? As soon as he finished speaking, Qing and the sword servant, Li Yun, flashed forward and surrounded Zhu Yuan from both sides. Zhu Yuan slowly clenched his fist tightly, and his eyes flickered with ghastly killing intent and coldness. Yang Yi. Suddenly, Fu Jingxian said, I know that you don't fear the Tao Order, but do you really want the Tao Order to become enemies of Ocean of Clouds Academy as well? Can the Academy really afford to endure the Tao Order's revenge right now? Yang Yi gazed at Fu Jingxian and said, They won't stop even if I do, right? You killed Qing Daofu, so they will absolutely not stop. Fu Jingxian looked Yang Yi in the eyes and said, However, even if we intend to take revenge, it would only be against you and not the entire Academy or the Ancient Sword School. But if you kill Elder Zhu Yuan, then trust me, the Tao Order will immediately change sides, and it will side with Welkin Wolf Mountain Range. At that time, the Academy and the Ancient Sword School will fall into a hopeless situation. Yang Yi fell silent. Meanwhile, Yu Wushuang walked over to his side. Even though I want him dead as well, but the Tao Order will definitely not let the matter go if you are to kill him now. Regardless of whether it's the Academy or the Sword School, both of them can't afford to endure the Tao Order's revenge right now. If you spare him, then there would be room for both the Academy and the Tao Order to discuss things. If you kill him, then the Tao Order would be forced to attack Ocean of Clouds Academy, even if it didn't want to become enemies with the Academy. Lu Wanner continued, Let him go. I know you don't like it, but do it for the Academy and everyone here in the city. All right? Yang Yi remained silent for a long while, and then he glanced at the crowd of cultivators from the city. He shrugged and gazed at Zhu Yuan. All right, you can go now. Fu Jingxian and the other members of the Tao Order instantly heaved sighs of relief when they heard him. Yang Yi had two saints on his side, so it was very likely for him to be able to kill Zhu Yuan. Most importantly, it would definitely cause the Tao Order to become enemies with both the Ancient Sword School and Ocean of Clouds Academy. Something like that wasn't good for the Tao Order, the Ancient Sword School, or Ocean of Clouds Academy. Fortunately, Yang Yi didn't act willfully this time. Zhu Yuan glanced coldly at Yang Yi, Yu Wushuang, and Lu Wanner. Remember that I'll definitely repay you 100-fold for everything that happened today. Fu Jinxian's face turned pale when she heard him. It's over now. I think you don't have to go now. Yang Ye's voice resounded abruptly, and then a ray of light tore through the sky and shot towards Zhu Yuan. It was quick to the absolute limit. Besides Qing and Zhu Yuan, no other human or demon beast could capture it clearly. Zhu Yuan's expression had changed drastically when Yang Yi attacked, because he hadn't expected Yang Yi to actually change his mind and attack immediately. Zhu Yuan didn't dare act carelessly at all, and he stretched out his right hand. The space before him condensed and overlapped in layers, and it instantly formed a thick spatial wall. Bang! Yang Yi stabbed Yellow Springs right against the spatial wall, and it shook violently from the impact. A moment later, Yang Yi suddenly spun Yellow Springs. Bang! A loud explosion resounded as the spatial wall exploded apart, and the ray of light shot towards Zhu Yuan. Zhu Yuan's eyelids twitched, and a silver spear which was thick like an arm appeared in his grasp. He shouted with fury as he stabbed it against the tip of Yang Ye's sword. Bang! An explosion resounded as a wave of energy swept out from the point of collision. At this moment, the sky instantly cracked apart, and numerous spatial rifts filled the sky. It was an extremely shocking sight to behold. Yang Ye's void rank sword intent surged out incessantly from within him and pressed down upon Zhu Yuan. At the same time, Zhu Yuan relied on the energy of the heavens and the earth to resist Yang Ye's sword intent. They fell into a momentary stalemate. Yang Ye's sword howled incessantly while Zhu Yuan's spear trembled without end. The space around them couldn't endure the power force from the collision, and it collapsed. But it didn't take long for the laws of the heavens and the earth to repair the space. However, it was blasted apart as soon as it was repaired. Yu Wushuang gazed at Qing, and the latter shook her head lightly. If I attack now, then I'll have to enter a pocket of space with Zhu Yuan. But Yang Yi can't do that. Don't worry. I'll lend him a hand if he can't hold on. Yu Wushuang nodded, and then she looked up into the sky. After Yang Yi and Zhu Yuan were locked in a stalemate for some time, the spectators noticed to their astonishment that Zhu Yuan's spear was actually gradually curving. At this moment, Zhu Yuan, who was a saint, had fallen into a disadvantaged state. Suddenly, Yang Yi moved yellow springs a little bit to the side, and it transformed into a ray of light that smashed against Zhu Yuan's chest. At the same time, Zhu Yuan's spear stabbed Yang Ye's chest. Bang! Bang! 2 explosions resounded. Yang Yi was blasted 300 m back while Zhu Yuan was pushed just 30 m back. However, there was a bloody hole on Zhu Yuan's chest while Zhu Yuan's spear hadn't even left a mark behind on Yang Ye's chest. It was naturally because of the sword armor. The reason Yang Yi had dared to exchange blows like that was because he was wearing the sword armor. The facts proved that he really didn't have to defend himself against Zhu Yuan's attacks while wearing the sword armor. If he didn't have the sword armor, then Yang Yi would naturally not dare to use his body to forcefully endure the full strength of a saint. Even though his physical defenses were formidable, they weren't strong enough to disregard a saint. However, it was a completely different story when he had the sword armor. Because the sword armor, which was boosted by his void rank sword intent, was something that even saints would find difficult to penetrate. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth curled into a smile. Because he was entirely capable of fighting a saint in single combat while he possessed the equipment provided to him by the ancient sword school. Actually, it was normal because he was using the best equipment in the ancient sword school. Not to mention him, even an ordinary person would probably be able to exchange a few blows with a monarch realm expert while utilizing such equipment. At this moment, Zhu Yuan had an extremely unsightly and ferocious expression on his face. After all, he'd actually been publicly injured by an ant at the half-saint realm. It was a humiliation, an absolute humiliation. Die! Zhu Yuan roared with fury as his figure flashed up into the air. He stretched out his right hand, and the spirit energy throughout the surrounding instantly surged towards him. In the end, all the spirit energy entered his body. Zhu Yuan slowly raised his hands in midair, and the clouds above him immediately started moving. It only took a moment for the clouds to slowly split apart, and then a huge palm which emanated an ancient aura descended down as if it had traveled down from outer space itself. The palm emanated a powerful wave of energy that was even slightly stronger than the energy of the heavens and the earth. Everyone here was astounded by the sight of the palm. In the past, saints had always entered pockets of space to do battle, so besides saints themselves, others were very rarely able to witness the true strength of saints. All they knew was that saints were very strong, but they didn't know how strong saints were. Now they knew. They had no doubt that Ocean of Cloud City and Welkin Wolf Mountain Range would be obliterated if that palm was allowed to descend. Isn't he afraid of breaking the rules of the radiant dimension and being pursued by all the saints in this world? Asked Yu Wushuang. Because Zhu Yuan's attack was sufficient to obliterate the entire area here. Qing shook her head slightly. His opponent isn't a saint. Since it isn't a saint, he naturally has no need to obey those so-called rules. Moreover, unless 2 saints go mad and start destroying the world around them, very few saints would emerge from their own closed-door cultivation and interfere in it. I see. Yu Wushuang nodded slightly, and then she gazed at Yang Yi while a trace of worry flashed through her eyes. Can Yang Yi resist that attack? Will Yang Yi be the first person in the history of Pine Prefecture to kill a saint while at the half-saint realm? Yu Wushuang wasn't the only one wondering about such things. Everyone else here had similar thoughts. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly as he gazed at the enormous palm, and there was a solemn expression in his eyes. He'd killed a saint in the past, but he'd done so by utilizing surprise attacks. At that time, Li Yuan hadn't been able to truly utilize his strength. Yet now, Yang Yi was facing a saint directly, a saint who was able to utilize his full strength in battle. Yang Yi slowly looked down at Yellow Springs, and then a moment of silence ensued before Yellow Springs suddenly howled. Its sword howl caused countless strands of earthen yellow energy to surge out from the ground and into Yang Yi. And then his aura and the aura of his sword shot into the sky and collided with the aura emanated from the enormous palm. The auras collided in midair, and the entire sky warped as if it was about to collapse. Yang Yi, let me see how much of a monstrous genius you are. Zhu Yuan's voice resounded like a thunderclap, and then the huge palm smashed down from up above. Only one of us will survive this battle. Yang Yi roared as a sword howl resounded, and then he transformed into a ray of light that tore through space as it shot towards the enormous palm. Rumble! The ray of light struck against the enormous palm, and a huge explosion resounded. The space in the area of the collision instantly cracked apart, and numerous cracks there were thick like pillars covered the entire sky. Yang Ye's attack dimmed down while cracks started to appear on Zhu Yuan's attack, and they entered into a stalemate in midair. A moment of silence ensued. OM! The sword armor Yang Yi wore suddenly exploded apart, and then countless swords that were fine as needles shot into the air and slammed against Zhu Yuan's attack. Hiss! The spectators watched as the sword needles slammed against the enormous palm, and they were merely stopped for a moment before they pierced through the palm. In an instant, the entire palm was riddled with holes. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly roared with fury, and he grabbed Yellow Springs with both hands and spun it against the enormous palm. Bang! Yang Ye's figure shot through it along with his sword. Rumble! The enormous palm shattered apart, and countless waves of energy erupted from the explosion. In an instant, the waves of energy swept through the entire sky and caused the space in its path to ripple violently. It seemed as if the space there would shatter at any moment, and it was truly horrifying. But it didn't take long for the waves of energy to be minced apart by the rays of light from Yang Ye's sword. Rays of light flashed horizontally and vertically through the sky, and they were accompanied by successive explosions while space shattered apart over and over again. Everyone was looking up at the sky, because a half-saint was there fighting a battle of life and death with a saint. Regardless of whether Yang Yi won or lost the battle today, his reputation would shake the entire prefecture, and it would surpass the 5 top geniuses. In the last 10,000 years of history in Pine Prefecture, Yang Yi was the only half-saint capable of challenging a saint in battle. If Yang Yi won, then he would be the first half-saint to defeat a saint in the history of Pine Prefecture. Would Yang Yi win or die? Yu Wushuang gazed at the sky for a very long time while standing on the city walls. Suddenly, she gazed at Oblivion Maiden and said, "He's very strong, right?" Oblivion Maiden glanced at Yu Wushuang, and then her gaze returned to the fox in her arms. She spoke softly, "It's all right." Yu Wushuang's pupils constricted, and she just stared blankly at Oblivion Maiden for some time. Bang! Suddenly, the space throughout the sky exploded apart, and a huge black hole appeared before everyone's eyes. After that, a figure fell from the sky, but a pair of wings suddenly appeared behind the figure when it was about to crash against the ground, and the figure immediately stopped on the spot. It was Yang Yi. At this moment, Yang Ye's countenance was pale while threads of blood were seeping out from the corner of his mouth. Moreover, his sword intent seemed to be extremely violent and disorderly at this moment. Yang Yi lost? Such a thought appeared in the minds of everyone here. But right at this moment, rain suddenly descended from the sky. The spectators were stunned by this scene, but it didn't take long for their eyes to open wide, and astonishment and disbelief filled their eyes, because it wasn't rain, it was spirit energy. Obviously, Zhu Yuan had perished. Yang Yi had killed a saint in direct combat. At this moment, countless people throughout the city were cheering while the disciples of the Tao Order were ghastly pale. The first half-saint to kill a saint in the history of Pine Prefecture. Qing's eyes were filled with shock as she gazed at Yang Yi. After she attained the saint realm, she had an even better understanding of the gap between half-saints and saints. It was exactly why she was shocked right now. At the same time, she felt fortunate that she hadn't tried to go back on her word because she'd attained the saint realm. Based on the terrifying strength and natural talent Yang Yi revealed, it wouldn't be difficult for him to attain the saint realm. Once that happened, just how terrifying would he be? See that? See that? Even saints are no match for Instructor Yang. Ha ha ha. From today onwards, Pine Prefecture will cease to have 5 top geniuses. It will only have Yang Yi. Would anyone dare to call himself a genius before Yang Yi? Would anyone be worthy of such a title? From today onwards, Yang Yi is the #1 expert in the younger generation of Pine Prefecture. The unprecedented expert of the younger generation. He's the first half-saint throughout the history of our Pine Prefecture that has killed a saint. Yang Ye's name will definitely become an eternal legend of our prefecture. The Tao Order and Zhu Yuan's names will go down in history as well. Besides the disciples of the Tao Order, all the other human cultivators were cheering with wild joy and shouting like madmen. At this moment, they who were once filled with despair had seen the light of hope, and it was Yang Yi who brought that light of hope to them. As for the demon beasts, they were looking at Yang Yi with horror in their eyes. It wasn't just the demon beasts. Even the elites of Sky Divine Hall were looking at Yang Yi with fear in their eyes. After all, feats like this had only occurred in the Central Divine Prefecture. Yet now it had appeared right before their eyes. A saint had been killed by a half-saint right as they watched, so how could they not feel afraid? Yang Yi withdrew a violet crystal and swallowed it. And then an unending supple of profound energy instantly appeared within him. All of this profound energy was converted into violet profound energy by the tiny vortex. And then it dispersed towards his limbs and meridians to repair the injuries he suffered both externally and internally. Was a saint easy to kill? As far as Yang Yi was concerned, it was naturally not easy, especially under the circumstances that he was fighting that saint in direct combat. In the end, the reason he'd been able to kill Zhu Yuan in direct combat had been the divine rank equipment he possessed. If he didn't possess the sword armor, dark sword wings, and yellow springs, just his strength alone would have been absolutely incapable of killing Zhu Yuan. Even surviving the battle would have been a huge problem for him. The terrifying, destructive abilities of saints far surpassed his imagination. Of course, it would definitely be absolutely easy to kill Zhu Yuan if he summoned Heaven's gravestone to aid him in battle. But could he? Once he did that, then he wouldn't just be burying Zhu Yuan, he might even be burying himself as well. No matter what, he'd obtained great gains from the battle. Not only had he obtained a new sword servant that was a saint at his prime, Yang Yi had obtained the violet crystals within Zhu Yuan's spatial ring. Besides the violet crystal he just consumed, he had 5 more. Besides that, he'd obtained some unexpected gains as well, and it came in the form of a low-grade divine rank palm technique, Heaven's Palm. It was that palm attack which Zhu Yuan had executed earlier. The might of that attack was still vivid within his memories. Even though he'd been able to overcome it, he still didn't dare underestimate it in the slightest. Because the reason he'd been able to overcome it was the sword armor, dark sword wings, void rank sword intent, and the death by a thought technique. It could be said that even lacking one of them would have prevented him from overcoming Zhu Yuan's Heaven's Palm technique. Bang! Suddenly, a loud explosion resounded from far away in the sky, and then another rain of spirit energy descended from the sky. Another saint had fallen. All the humans and demon beasts looked up into the sky. Which side was that saint from? A long time passed before 2 old men appeared before everyone here. One of them was Elder Mo from Sky Divine Hall, and the other was the Dean of Ocean of Clouds Academy, Xianxia. The forces on the side of the academy cheered once more when they witnessed this scene. The Dean was still able to kill a saint while fighting 2 saints on his own. All hail the Dean! All hail the Dean! Ha ha! The Dean is such a formidable figure. Yet those saints from Sky Divine Hall dared to overestimate their ability and challenge Dean Shang in battle. They really were courting death. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Shang Yunqi all fine and well. After all, the old man was the backbone of the academy. If Shang Yunqi fell in battle, then Yang Yi had no doubt that Ocean of Clouds Academy's morale would definitely fall to rock bottom. Fortunately, Shang Yunqi was fine. Not only was he still alive, he had even killed one of the saints from Sky Divine Hall. Ocean of Clouds Academy, which was previously in a disadvantaged position, could be said to have the upper hand right now. Of course, Yang Yi didn't dare act carelessly. After all, a mysterious power was standing behind Sky Divine Hall and Welkin Wolf Mountain Range. Shang Yunqi glanced at Yang Yi, and then he nodded lightly. "I knew you wouldn't disappoint me. You almost killed me." Yang Yi spoke angrily. After all, how could he have forgotten how the old geezer had tricked him and made him go to the Bear Clan? Shang Yunqi grinned. "I'll compensate you." Yang Ye's eyes lit up. "How?" Shang Yunqi replied. "How about I give my granddaughter to you?" Shang Qingying's expression changed when she heard this, and then she glared angrily at Shang Yunqi before glaring at Yang Yi as well. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. "Old man, you're just drawing hate to me. Are the both of you done?" Meanwhile, Elder Mo from Sky Divine Hall spoke ferociously. "Shang Yunqi, we underestimated you. But do you really think that killing one of our saints would be able to keep your academy safe? Let me tell you that you're wrong. Ocean of Clouds Academy will definitely be destroyed today, and no one can save you." Shang Yunqi spoke coldly. "I seem to recall you saying something similar just now. This will be the last time. I guarantee it." It wasn't Elder Mo who spoke those words, but a masked man who'd suddenly appeared by Elder Mo's side. The man wore a violet gold-colored robe and kept his hands behind his back, and he emanated a terrifying aura that caused one's heart to palpitate. As soon as the masked man finished speaking, 3 other black-robed men appeared in the sky around the city. Saints. All of them were saints. Despair covered the faces of everyone within the city. Yang Ye's pupils constricted as well, because he hadn't expected that 4 saints would suddenly appear here. In that way, their enemies would have an absolute advantage over them. "I hadn't intended to do it myself, but now it would seem like I have no other choice," the masked man continued. "Ocean of Clouds Academy must be destroyed today." Shang Yunqi stared fixedly at the masked man. "You're from White Deer Academy," the masked man replied. "What do you think?" Shang Yunqi closed his eyes, and quite some time passed before he suddenly opened them and pointed at Yang Yi. "From today onward, Yang Yi is the new Dean of Ocean of Clouds Academy. So long as you belong to the Academy, then you must obey him unconditionally." As soon as he finished speaking, Shang Yunqi suddenly raised his hands, and the space around him started to warp. Waves of energy that could obliterate the heavens and the earth surged out explosively from within him, and they instantly shot towards the masked man and the other 3 black-robed saints. "You intend to fight 4 of us on your own? You think too highly of yourself. However, since you want to die, then I'll fulfill your wish." As soon as he finished speaking, the masked man and the other 3 black-robed saints instantly entered a pocket of space with Shang Yunqi. A moment of silence ensued, and then the masked man's horrified voice suddenly resounded from high above. "Soul ignition! Soul ignition! Shang Yunqi, have you gone mad? You're actually detonating yourself." Bang! The sky dimmed amidst a deafening explosion. "No!" Shang Qingying suddenly roared with misery. She wanted to charge up into the sky, but Lu Wanner and Yu Wushuang held her back with all their might. As for the students and everyone else in the city, they looked up into the sky with astonishment when they heard the masked man, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. The dean ignited his soul? He detonated himself? They were praying that it wasn't true. Yang Ye's eyes were filled with shock as well, because the explosion and the scene that had appeared in the sky told him that someone had definitely detonated himself high above in a pocket of space, and that person should be Shang Yunqi. Soul ignition before detonating himself meant that Shang Yunqi had vanished eternally from this world. What exactly was the background of those 4 saints that they actually made Shang Yunqi act so decisively and choose to ignite his soul before detonating himself? At this moment, Elder Mo had shock in his eyes as well. Obviously, He'd never imagined that Xianxia would actually choose to ignite his soul and detonate himself. After all, if a saint chose to ignite the soul and detonate himself, then it was equivalent to truly vanishing from the world, and even reincarnation would be impossible. So, it made him wonder if Xianxia had gone mad. A long time passed before the sky gradually returned to normal, and only a single person remained in the sky, the masked man. Besides the masked man, Xianxia and the other 3 black-robed saints were gone. Xianxia! The masked man's furious howl resounded through the sky. After all, just a moment of carelessness had caused him to lose 3 saints and even suffer heavy injuries. So, he could be said to have suffered a huge loss today. Suddenly, a sword howl shot into the sky, and then a ray of brilliant light tore through the sky and shot towards the masked man. It was naturally Xianxia who'd launched the attack. Even though he didn't know who the masked man was, he had no doubt that the masked man was his enemy. Since he was an enemy, he deserved death and should be killed. Moreover, the masked man was heavily injured, so it was the best opportunity for him to attack. Since the masked man had been able to survive when Xianxia had ignited his soul and detonated himself, it proved how terrifying the masked man's strength was. So, Xianxia hadn't held back at all, and he'd utilized both the dark sword wings and death by a thought. At this moment, Xianxia's speed was at its limits. Xianxia's sword had stabbed against the masked man's chest before the masked man could recover from his shock. However, Xianxia was astonished to notice that his sword felt like it had stabbed against a solid piece of divine rank iron. Not only was it unable to move an inch further, his arm was even numbed by the impact. "Fuck off!" The masked man roared furiously as he swiftly slapped his right palm against Xianxia's sword. A huge amount of force came from Yellow Springs and instantly blasted Xianxia flying. However, it only took a moment for Xianxia to vanish mysteriously in midair, and he was behind the masked man when he appeared once more. At the same time, the tip of Yellow Springs had arrived before the man's nape. The masked man's pupils constricted. He'd clearly never expected Xianxia to actually just suddenly appear behind him. However, his reaction wasn't slow at all. He'd suddenly vanished on the spot before Yellow Springs could even touch his nape, and he was behind Xianxia when his figure appeared once more. After that, he slapped his palm towards the back of Xianxia's head. Unexpectedly, Xianxia didn't fall into a panic state, nor did he try to dodge it. He just stabbed his sword backwards. Hiss! Bang! Xianxia's figure was blasted flying, and he flew quite a distance before he could finally stop himself. While the masked man wasn't pushed back, a bleeding hole had been opened up on his right shoulder. The masked man looked at Xianxia, and his voice carried a trace of shock. "Your sword was actually able to penetrate my defenses." Xianxia didn't explain anything, nor did he waste his breath on the man. His figure vanished on the spot, and he was in front of the masked man when he appeared again. After that, the sword armor he wore suddenly exploded apart into countless sword needles, and they instantly transformed into rays of light that enveloped the masked man. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! Suddenly, the rays of light were dispersed, and a figure flashed out from within them. In an instant, the figure arrived before Xianxia and slapped his palm towards Xianxia's chest. However, a green barrier of light suddenly enveloped Xianxia when the masked man's palm was about to strike his chest. Bang! A muffled bang resounded as the green barrier of light trembled violently. Meanwhile, Xianxia was blasted over 500 m, but it didn't take long for him to stop in midair. Moreover, he didn't have a scratch on him. Another divine rank treasure. The masked man spoke ferociously. "How many do you have?" Xianxia waved his right hand, and the sword needles immediately flew back to him, and then they formed the sword armor once more. At the same time, the cape he wore suddenly transformed into a pair of wings. Besides that, he flipped his left palm, and Jade Drop appeared in his left grasp. He was enveloped by the dimensional cube, wearing the sword armor, holding Yellow Springs and Jade Drop, and had the dark sword wings on his back. The masked man's eyelids twitched when he witnessed the scene, and he roared furiously, "5 divine rank treasures! You!" Yang Yi didn't give him the time to speak another word as Yang Yi had shot towards the masked man. The spectators expected the masked man to counterattack, but they were astounded to witness him turn around and vanish on the spot. At the same time, the masked man's voice resounded from far away in the horizon. "I'll definitely slaughter everyone in Ocean of Cloud City when I return." He'd fled. The spectators were stunned by this scene. Even a saint was actually scared away by Yang Yi? That's a saint? That saint that we usually look up to? He fled without even having the courage to fight. He isn't weak. It's Instructor Yang who's too strong. Instructor Yang has surpassed saints. It's such a pity that we've lost the Dean. Destroy Welkin Wolf Mountain Range. Destroy Sky Divine Hall. Avenge the Dean. Avenge the Dean. Countless people started howling furiously in the city. Elder Mo's face was unsightly to the extreme as well, because he hadn't expected the masked man to actually flee. He'd fled. Even though Elder Mo knew that the masked man was heavily injured, he felt that the masked man still shouldn't have fled. Elder Mo hesitated on the spot for a long time, and then he finally stared at Yang Yi and said, "Yang Yi, just you wait." He gazed at Yu Wushuang when he spoke up to this point, and he continued, "You won't be able to escape my Sky Divine Hall." Yang Yi gazed at Elder Mo and spoke calmly, "I'll kill as many as Sky Divine Hall sends." "You?" Elder Mo ridicule. "Yang Yi, you think too highly of yourself. You're nothing without that set of divine rank treasures." Yang Yi replied, "I'll just ask you one question. Do you dare to fight me in single combat?" The corners of Elder Mo's mouth twitched. "Do you dare to take off those divine rank treasures?" Yang Yi laughed with ridicule and said, "Just fuck off before I change my mind." Elder Mo stared fixedly at Yang Yi, and quite some time passed before he laughed coldly. "Just you wait, Yang Yi. Just you wait. The day will come when my Sky Divine Hall lets you know how tiny you are." As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Mo was about to turn around and leave, but Yang Yi suddenly spoke. "Wait!" Elder Mo's figure stiffened slightly, and then he turned around to gaze at Yang Yi. "What? You want to try and kill me?" The elites of Sky Divine Hall who stood behind him entered a fully vigilant state, and they were ready to attack at any moment. Yang Yi grinned and said, "Calm down. I just wanted to tell you something. I'll be paying a visit to Sky Divine Hall soon. Don't worry, I won't make all of you wait too long." Elder Mo gazed at Yang Yi for a short while before he said, "Sky Divine Hall will be waiting for your arrival. Just as you've said, I hope you don't make us wait too long." Elder Mo's figure flashed, and he vanished with the others who stood behind him. Meanwhile, Qing suddenly said, "Why didn't you try to kill him?" Yang Yi shook his head lightly, and then he closed his eyes. Of course he wanted to kill Elder Mo and the members of Sky Divine Hall. But could he? He was actually on the verge of exhaustion right now. After all, fighting two saints in succession had exhausted a huge amount of his strength, and it was especially so when he was utilizing divine rank treasures. If his profound energy didn't far surpass ordinary cultivators, and if he didn't possess violet crystals, then he would be lying on the ground by now. So, he was truly without the strength to fight another saint. Even though he had Qing and Liyun, it was impossible for them to kill Elder Mo even if they joined forces. Because Qing had only just advanced into the saint realm, so while her strength was at the level of a saint, there definitely was a gap between her and someone like Elder Mo who'd been a saint for a very long time. As for Liyun, he was an inferior version of a saint. Once Qing and Liyun were locked in battle with Elder Mo and those elites of Sky Divine Hall were allowed to attack, then it would definitely be a calamity for the cultivators in the city, because he couldn't stop them at all in his current state. So, he had no choice but to scare Elder Mo away. He has no other choice. Even though he had no other choice, it was a good thing for Ocean of Cloud City, because once Elder Mo and the elites of Sky Divine Hall left, all the other saints on Welkin Wolf Mountain Range's side would be locked in battle, including Welkin Wolf Demon King. In other words, Welkin Wolf Mountain Range had no other experts. Yang Yi gazed at the city and said, "Open the gates and kill." As soon as he spoke, the gates were opened, and then countless cultivators swarmed out from within. At this moment, their morale was surging, and they were at their peak strength. As for the demon beasts, while their opponents were the cultivators of Ocean of Cloud City, they remained constantly vigilant against Yang Yi, as they were very much afraid that Yang Yi would suddenly attack them. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for them to bring forth their full strength in battle. So, the demon beasts were pushed back repeatedly as soon as the battle began. Meanwhile, Yang Yi stood proudly in the sky and looked down at the demon beasts on the ground below. Even though he hadn't attacked, he made the demon beasts constantly feel the pressure of his presence. Suddenly, Oblivion Maiden who stood on the city walls strode step by step towards Yang Yi. She petted the fox's head lightly as she walked, and she spoke softly, "Ali, we'll be able to head back right away." Yu Wushuang's face turned slightly grim when she witnessed this scene, and she hurriedly said, "He killed a saint." Oblivion Maiden's calm voice resounded. "A saint? I've killed a saint as well, and more than one." Yu Wushuang was stunned on the spot when she heard Oblivion Maiden. "She has killed saints? And she has killed many? Who is she?" Yu Wushuang gazed at Qing and shouted anxiously, "Senior, stop her." Regardless of who Oblivion Maiden was, she dared to go face Yang Yi even when she knew that he possessed the strength to kill saints. That represented that she was definitely confident in her own strength. Moreover, Yang Yi had just undergone fierce battles with two saints in succession. So, regardless of whether it was his physical strength or profound energy, they were definitely at a weak state. So, she'd decisively chosen to ask Qing to stop Oblivion Maiden as a precaution. Qing's gaze had descended onto Oblivion Maiden at the instant that Oblivion Maiden had started to walk towards Yang Yi. Qing hesitated for a moment when she heard Yu Wushuang, and then she flicked a ray of light towards Oblivion Maiden. Oblivion Maiden's face remained calm when she noticed that ray of light shooting towards her, and she held the fox in her left arm as she lightly tapped her right index finger against the ray of light. It was like time was frozen when Oblivion Maiden's finger touched the ray of light, and then a moment of silence ensued before the ray of light vanished without making a single sound. It was like it had never existed. Qing's pupils constricted, and there was fear and shock in her eyes. The mysterious energy that Oblivion Maiden possessed felt extremely dangerous to Qing. Oblivion Maiden paid no attention to Qing, and she just continued walking step by step towards Yang Yi. Meanwhile, Yang Ye's Saint Realm sword servant, Li Yun, suddenly shot towards Oblivion Maiden. In the beginning, Li Yun was extremely quick to the point that Yu Wushuang and the others couldn't even see him clearly. However, it didn't take long for him to slow down, and he was growing slower and slower. When he arrived in front of Oblivion Maiden, it seemed like he'd fallen into a swamp and found it difficult to even take a step forward. After that, Oblivion Maiden didn't even seem to have done anything, but Li Yun actually started to decompose and vanish into thin air. Everyone here was astounded by the sight of that. She was telling the truth. Yu Wushuang's eyes were filled with astonishment as she watched Li Yun vanish without a trace. Yu Wushuang had thought that Oblivion Maiden had been exaggerating when she said that she'd killed many saints in the past. But the truth was that Oblivion Maiden really possessed the ability to kill saints, and it was with such ease. Qing's eyes narrowed when she saw Oblivion Maiden kill Li Yun with such ease, and there was shock in her eyes. She hadn't expected that there was another half-saint besides Yang Yi in Pine Prefecture who could kill a saint. Moreover, it was even done with such ease. Who exactly is that woman? When she saw Oblivion Maiden continuing towards Yang Yi, Qing pondered deeply for an instant and was about to attack. However, Yang Yi appeared in front of her, and he shook his head in her direction. Qing glanced at him and stopped. Yang Yi turned around to gaze at Oblivion Maiden, and there was a solemn expression in his eyes. Even though Li Yun wasn't a true saint, he was extremely strong. But Oblivion Maiden had actually killed him with such ease. Even Yang Yi couldn't accomplish that without his divine rank treasures. However, Oblivion Maiden hadn't just been able to accomplish that. She'd accomplished it with such ease. A formidable enemy. Yang Yi gazed at her for a long time before he said, "You are the one who was looking for me?" She nodded. "For a very long time." Yang Yi asked, "You're here to kill me?" She nodded again. Yang Yi asked, "Is there a reason?" She raised her head to look at him before she spoke. I'm from the Nether Pavilion. The Nether Pavilion. Xianxia's eyes instantly narrowed when he heard her. He knew that the Nether Pavilion would definitely dispatch its forces to kill him after he killed those 13 members of the Nether Pavilion and Yu Wuing. But he'd never expected it to dispatch someone so quickly. Moreover, it was actually someone who possessed a status similar to Nether Maiden. Oblivion Maiden suddenly started walking towards Yang Yi as she spoke. You killed Shadow Maiden who hadn't awakened yet. So you have to die. Can you give me a moment first? Yang Yi suddenly spoke before withdrawing another violet crystal and swallowing it. Oblivion Maiden glanced at Yang Yi, pondered deeply for an instant, and then said, Ali wants to go home. However, I can wait if you promise me that you won't run. I definitely won't run. Yang Yi guaranteed. I just want to ask you a few things. She replied, Go ahead. Is the Nether Pavilion very strong? Asked Yang Yi. He's always been very curious about that mysterious power called the Nether Pavilion. Unfortunately, he knew nothing about it. Now that he'd encountered a core member of it, he naturally refused to let go of such an opportunity to ask about it. Oblivion Maiden glanced at Yang Yi and said, It is. Yang Yi asked, How stronger is it when compared to Sky Divine Hall? She spoke calmly. It can be destroyed in an instant. The corners of his mouth twitched. I've brought quite the calamity upon myself. Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, I remember that the Nether Pavilion has 10 pavilions. In other words, it has 10 pavilion masters. How is your strength ranked amongst them? She lowered her head slightly, and a long time passed before she said, The 9th! Are you joking? Yang Yi cried out involuntarily and said, You are so strong, yet you're only ranked at the 9th position? Are you trying to scare me? She spoke softly. There are so many there who are stronger than me. Yang Yi gulped because she didn't seem to be lying. In other words, the Nether Pavilion had dispatched one of its weakest members. But that weakest member could kill saints. Just thinking about it caused the corners of Yang Ye's mouth to twitch. This really is quite a calamity. Actually, you're not bad. She glanced at Yang Yi and spoke softly. At the very least, I would definitely be unable to catch up to you if you are to flee. Yang Ye's face darkened. Are you praising me or insulting me? She asked. Do you have any other questions? Yang Yi pondered deeply for a moment and said, Who's the strongest amongst the 10 of you? She replied, The legendary Sky Maiden. Yang Yi asked, Why is she the strongest? Oblivion Maiden gazed at him and spoke calmly. She feeds on the eye of the Heaven Tao. Yang Ye's pupils constricted. She feeds on the eye of the Heaven Tao. In other words, she can eat it? Is that a joke? Right when Yang Yi was about to ask another question, she said, You can only ask one last question. Yang Yi glanced at her, pondered deeply for a moment and said, Do you know Nether Maiden? She frowned slightly. How do you know her? Looks like you do know her. Yang Yi continued, Can you tell me about her? Oblivion Maiden said, I don't like her. Yang Yi was quite surprised. Why? She likes to fight. Oblivion Maiden spoke in a low voice. She fights all day and night. Yang Yi was speechless. Oblivion Maiden started walking towards Yang Yi. All right, I'm going to kill you now. One last question. Yang Yi said, Are you confident in your ability to kill me? She was puzzled. You aren't very strong, so why wouldn't I? The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. Is she naive, or is she trying to infuriate me on purpose? Yang Yi stopped allowing his thoughts to run wild and took a short breath. At this moment, he'd almost recovered completely under the help of the violet crystal he consumed. Even though he wasn't at his peak, he felt that he should be able to fight her. Slash! Yang Yi suddenly roared furiously, and yellow swings shot swiftly towards her. A brilliant ray of sword energy tore through space and instantly arrived before her. However, a strange scene appeared there. The sword energy actually started to split apart at an alarming speed upon arriving in front of her, and it only took an instant for it to vanish completely. Yang Ye's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene. After all, His sword energy was enhanced by void rank sword intent. What energy is she using? Meanwhile, Oblivion Maiden took a step forward, and then she instantly appeared in front of Yang Yi before tapping her finger in his direction. It was an extremely ordinary tap that didn't carry any fluctuations of energy. Yang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly. He naturally didn't dare act carelessly or underestimate her attack. He immediately waved his right hand, and the dimensional cube flashed out and instantly enveloped her. At this moment, the space within the dimensional cube instantly warped and overlapped, and it seemed to be about to fold and warp her figure. However, Nether Maiden's face was calm as she swiftly pressed her palms forward. Crack! Crack! The warped space around her instantly started to decompose, and only a moment passed before it had been transformed into tens of thousands of pieces. After that, those pieces were decomposed again, and they became hundreds of thousands of pieces. Then they vanished. It wasn't just the space there which had vanished. Even Yang Ye's dimensional cube, a divine rank treasure, had vanished as well. Yang Ye's expression became unprecedentedly solemn when he witnessed this scene. After all, the dimensional cube was a divine rank treasure, and it could even stop the attacks of saints. However, it couldn't resist a light attack from the woman. What exactly is that energy? Yang Yi held tightly onto Yellow Springs. He'd intended to seize the opportunity to attack, but when he saw how easily she destroyed the dimensional cube, Yang Yi knew that even J-Drop and Yellow Springs wouldn't be able to stop that mysterious energy of hers. Perhaps only Heaven's Gravestone could resist that mysterious energy of hers. Yang Yi asked solemnly, "What is that energy?" "I don't know." She walked towards Yang Yi as she said, "So long as it's material that I understand, then I can rearrange or decompose them." Yang Yi asked, "Then what about material that you don't understand?" "I don't know." As soon as she finished speaking, she was already in front of Yang Yi, and she stretched out her hand and tapped a finger in Yang Yi's direction. "Don't worry, it won't hurt. Come, let me see if you can decompose this." As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, he took a step forward and stretched out a finger towards her as well. A mysterious strand of energy was flickering on the tip of Yang Yi's finger. It was the laws of decay. Oblivion Maiden's strength was too terrifying and mysterious, so Yang Yi didn't dare to utilize his divine rank treasures against her, because if he used his treasures to collide directly with the mysterious energy she controlled, then all his divine rank treasures would probably be destroyed. The dimensional cube was a divine rank treasure, but it hadn't even been able to resist her for a moment before being destroyed. Under such circumstances, he'd completely given up on utilizing divine rank treasures against her. As for his sword energy, it was completely useless against her. So he used the laws of decay. The spectators watched as Yang Yi and Oblivion Maiden's fingers touched. It didn't make a sound and was extremely calm. However, both their faces turned ghastly pale, and there was extremely shock in both their eyes. It didn't take long for the spectators to watch in horror as Yang Ye's finger started to decompose. As for Oblivion Maiden's finger, it was aging swiftly. In an instant, her finger had shriveled up like the finger of an old woman, and it wasn't tender and white anymore. Moreover, it didn't just stop at her finger. Her arm was aging swiftly as well. Just like that, Yang Ye's hand was being decomposed incessantly, and it took less than 2 breaths of time for half his arm to vanish. As for Oblivion Maiden, her entire arm had shriveled up, and then it was blown away as dust by a gust of wind. She gazed at her arm that vanished with the wind, and there was no calm and composure left in her eyes anymore. There was only shock there now. It didn't take long for Oblivion Maiden's body to start aging. Especially her face, it was aging rapidly at a visible speed. Yet she could only watch as she aged swiftly because she was helpless against this mysterious energy that Yang Yi wielded, because she couldn't find a trace of it, so she couldn't decompose it even if she wanted to. However, Yang Ye's situation wasn't any better. At this moment, his entire arm had been decomposed. Moreover, his shoulder had started to decompose as well. He tried to suppress it with his sword intent, but even void rank sword intent couldn't stop his body from decomposing. At this moment, he was helpless just like Oblivion Maiden. He was helpless against that mysterious energy she utilized. They were going to perish together. 2 breaths of time later, Oblivion Maiden was old like an elderly woman. Her face was covered in wrinkles, and her eyes were lifeless. From the moment they attacked each mother until they were reduced to such a state, merely less than 3 breaths of time had passed. So, besides Qing, the others had no idea what had happened. Qing was horrified when she saw that Xianxia and Oblivion Maiden were about to take each other down with them, and she shot towards Oblivion Maiden. However, a pitch-black iron chain suddenly shot through the sky when she was about to arrive in front of Oblivion Maiden, and it shot swiftly towards Qing. Qing's expression changed as she'd sensed the terrifying force it contained. She didn't dare act carelessly and immediately transformed into a huge green python. And then she shot into the sky and slammed against the iron chain. Bang! A huge explosion resounded. And then the others here watched as Qing's figure fell from the sky and crashed heavily against the ground, causing the surroundings to quake. All the spectators in the surroundings were shocked, and they looked up into the sky. However, Xianxia and Oblivion Maiden had vanished. Lu Wanner, who stood by Yu Wushuang's side, asked in a trembling tone, Will he be fine? Even though she didn't know what had happened between Xianxia and Oblivion Maiden, she'd noticed that Xiangxia's arm was gone. Moreover, even half his face had vanished. Yu Wushuang clenched her fists tightly, and her hands were trembling. Quite some time passed before she finally took a deep breath, and then turned to look at the demon beasts in the surroundings. A wisp of ferocity surged onto her face. Cultivators of Ocean of Cloud City, hear me. Kill all the demon beasts on Welkin Wolf Mountain Range. The strengths of the demon beast army actually surpassed Ocean of Cloud City, but the demon beasts had lost saints in succession, causing their morale to be blasted to rock bottom. Coupled with the fact that Welkin Wolf Demon King and the other saints weren't here, they had no will to fight at all. They only wanted to flee right now. As for the human cultivators, their will to fight and morale was at its peak. So, their imposing aura completely crushed the demon beasts. The army of demon beasts was steadily losing ground. At this moment, they'd been pushed into the mountain range. But the human army still showed no signs of stopping. But they didn't attack rashly as well. The human army was arranged in an orderly manner under Yu Wushuang's orders while they pushed into the mountain range. Suddenly, the Python clan and Steel Ape clan's forces retreated. Their retreat was undoubtedly like adding fuel to the flame. The strength of the Welkin Wolf clan was utterly incapable of resisting the joint forces of Ocean of Cloud City and the Ancient Sword School. So, the human army killed their way to Welkin Wolf City under Yu Wushuang's orders. An ocean of corpses was scattered throughout the ground behind them. Yu Wushuang stood outside Welkin Wolf City while a human army of millions stood behind her. Some of them were the elites of the academy, and some were the elites of the Ancient Sword School. At this moment, all of them were filled with the will to fight. They were merely awaiting Yu Wushuang's orders to swarm forward, breach the city, and carry out a slaughter. At this moment, there was no one to manage the situation within Welkin Wolf City. Even though no one fled, they were still in disorder and chaos. Obviously, the human army merely had to enter the city and the Welkin Wolf clan would be history. Attack! Yu Wushuang's ghastly voice resounded. Kill! The army behind her charged towards the city. Stop! Suddenly, a furious howl resounded from the sky, and then Welkin Wolf Demon King and the Black Dragon appeared in the sky above the city. At this moment, both of them were in human form. Welkin Wolf Demon King's face was ghastly pale while blood covered his entire body. Obviously, he was heavily injured. Yu Wushuang and the others stopped their attack because of Welkin Wolf Demon King's arrival. Welkin Wolf Demon King paid no attention to Yu Wushuang and the human army. He gazed at the Black Dragon and said, "Do you really intend to fight me to the death?" The Black Dragon spoke flatly, "You're no match for me." Welkin Wolf Demon King spoke ferociously, "What if I ignite my soul?" The Black Dragon's eyelids twitched slightly. Even though Welkin Wolf Demon King was no match for him, it wouldn't be the same if Welkin Wolf Demon King ignited his soul. Soul ignition was the ignition of one's potential and everything one possessed in order to obtain a temporary boost of strength. Under such circumstances, Welkin Wolf Demon King's strength would arrive at a terrifying level. If Welkin Wolf Demon King was even more resolute and detonated himself, then the Black Dragon might die here. Of course, if he was willing to pay a price, then he wouldn't have to fear Welkin Wolf Demon King's soul ignition and self-detonation. However, the problem was that paying such a price wasn't worth it to him. There was no enmity between him and Welkin Wolf Demon King. What if Xianxia isn't the scion of your dragon clan? What would you do then? Welkin Wolf Demon King continued. I know that he draconify himself, so he's definitely linked to your dragon clan. However, what if he isn't that scion which he says that he is? Wouldn't you have been used by him? But what if he is? Suddenly, Yu Wushuang gazed at the Black Dragon and said, Senior, just think about it. If he didn't have a close link to your dragon clan, then would an expert of your dragon clan allow a human cultivator to merge with his bloodline and obtain his inheritance? Moreover, if it wasn't willingly bestowed upon him by an expert of the dragon clan, then could a human forcefully seize the inheritance and bloodline of a supreme expert of the dragon clan? The Black Dragon's brows were pressed tightly together. Actually, he didn't believe Xianxia deep down in his heart. However, it was a fact that Xianxia had inherited the ability to draconify himself and possessed the bloodline of the dragon clan. That caused him to be extremely conflicted. Bang! 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 Suddenly, a wave of explosions resounded from the sky, and then the Saints of Welkin Wolf Mountain Range and the Saints of Ocean of Clouds Academy appeared in the sky above Welkin Wolf City. Regardless of whether it was the Saints from Welkin Wolf Mountain Range or Ocean of Clouds Academy, they were severely injured, and they would definitely lose their companions in succession if they were to continue fighting. Welkin Wolf Demon King glanced at Yu Wushuang and the others, and then his gaze descended onto the Saints of the Academy in the end. I admit that my Welkin Wolf Mountain Range has lost, and it has been utterly defeated. Let me just say this today. While we've lost, we will absolutely not surrender. If your academy wants to continue fighting, then we can. If worse comes to worse, we Saints will ignite our souls and detonate ourselves to vanish from this world along with your academy. Instructor Zhua and the others' expressions changed when they heard Welkin Wolf Demon King. If Welkin Wolf Demon King and the other 4 Saints were to ignite their souls and detonate themselves, then it really was possible for them to take both Ocean of Clouds Academy and Ocean of Clouds City with them, because they could disregard the Eye of the Heaven Tao when they did that. After all, soul ignition represented that they wouldn't even have the chance to enter into the cycle of reincarnation, so why would they fear the Eye of the Heaven Tao? No one doubted Welkin Wolf Demon King, because his clan was about to be annihilated, so what else was he not capable of at a time like this? I'm not going to interfere in this nonsense. Meanwhile, the Black Dragon spoke abruptly. I'm returning to the Central Divine Prefecture to ask the Patriarch about the Scion of the Dragons. If Xianxia was telling the truth, then I'll annihilate your Welkin Wolf clan myself. If he lied, then I'll kill everyone related to him. As soon as he finished speaking, the Black Dragon vanished into the sky. Welkin Wolf Demon King heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, and then he gazed at Instructor Zhua and the others. Shall we perish together? Instructor Zhua's face was gloomy, and a long time passed before he suddenly gazed at Yu Wushuang. Where's Xianxia? Yu Wushuang clenched her fists and said, Someone took him away, but that person should have no ill intent towards him. Instructor Zhua nodded, and then he looked at Welkin Wolf Demon King. Welkin Wolf Demon King, don't think that you can threaten us with soul ignition. The Dean has already ignited his soul and perished, so my academy will definitely not let the matter rest just like that. Xianxia is the Dean of our academy now, so he'll decide if we continue fighting or stop. However, based on his character, you should prepare to ignite your souls at any moment. Don't worry, I'll ignite my soul with all of you. Welkin Wolf Demon King clenched his fists, and his face was gloomy and dark. Yu Wushuang glanced at Welkin Wolf Demon King, and then she said, Forces of the city, hear me. Stand of guard here and be vigilant at all times. We'll wait for Welkin Wolf Demon King to ignite his soul. In the depths of a mountain range over 5,000 kilometers away from Ocean of Clouds City, Xianxia and Oblivion Maiden were lying on the ground. Xianxia's face was still decomposing, but it was much slower than before. As for Oblivion Maiden's body, it was still aging as well. But similarly, the speed her body aged had slowed down. A woman in linen clothes stood before them, and she suddenly shouted, "Reverse!" As soon as the woman spoke, a shocking scene appeared. Xianxia's decomposing body actually started to heal. Even though it was quite slow, he was recovering. First, his face started to slowly return to normal. Next, his arm appeared slowly as well. Meanwhile, Oblivion Maiden, who laid by Xianxia's side, was recovering as well. Her aged and withered body seemed like a withered tree that had gained new life, and she was slowly returning to normal. A long time passed before both Xianxia and Oblivion Maiden returned to normal. Xianxia slowly opened his eyes, and he saw a familiar scene. Linen clothes, bare feet, and a body which had a black chain coiled around it. "It's you," said Xianxia. Even though the person had her back towards him, how could he not recognize the person who stood before him? Because she was Nether Maiden, who he knew on profounder continent. Quite some time passed before Nether Maiden spoke. "Long time no see." Xianxia stood up and walked towards her. Meanwhile, Nether Maiden suddenly said, "Don't come over here." Xianxia was slightly stunned, and he was puzzled. "Why?" She fell silent for a long time before she said, "I don't want you to see how I look right now." A bad feeling arose in Xianxia's heart. His figure flashed over and appeared before Nether Maiden. He was stunned upon laying eyes on her. "She's Nether Maiden?" At this moment, Nether Maiden seemed like how Oblivion Maiden had been before this. Besides her eyes that were still sharp and full of spirit as they had been, her face had aged like an old woman who was about to enter the coffin. Nether Maiden asked, "Do I look very ugly?" "You." Xianxia was astounded. "What happened to you?" "We were the cause." Suddenly, Oblivion Maiden said, "She hasn't fully grasped the ability to reverse the future, but she forcefully utilized it for the sake of reversing the energy of your laws and my special ability. The price she paid for that was her lifespan. Now she has less than a year left to live. She'll perish if she can't attain the Saint Realm in a year." When she spoke up to this point, Oblivion Maiden walked over to Nether Maiden, and she looked Nether Maiden in the eyes. "I don't understand why you did this." Xianxia's pupils constricted, and he gazed at Nether Maiden and said, "Is she telling the truth?" Nether Maiden fell silent for a long time before she said, "It isn't so difficult to attain the Saint Realm." She gazed at Oblivion Maiden and continued, "I have something to discuss with him in private. So, leave for a while, all right?" Oblivion Maiden said, "The order I received is to kill him." Nether Maiden looked Oblivion Maiden in the eyes and said, "Killing you is absolutely easy if we join forces." Oblivion Maiden's eyelids twitched slightly. You dare to betray the Nether Pavilion?" Nether Maiden replied, "Xianxia is an insignificant existence to the Nether Pavilion. The Sect Master and those other two seniors haven't taken his existence seriously at all. The reason they sent you was merely to deter the cultivators of Pine Prefecture. So long as you head back and report that the assignment is complete, then this matter will be forgotten, right?" Oblivion Maiden said, "Why would I do that? If you don't, then you and that fox in your arms will die." Nether Maiden stared fixedly at Oblivion Maiden, and she didn't conceal the killing intent in her eyes. "Don't you dare!" Oblivion Maiden held tightly onto the fox, and killing intent surged into her eyes as well. Nether Maiden said, "Do you want to give it a try?" Oblivion Maiden and Nether Maiden stared at each other for a long time. In the end, Oblivion Maiden withdrew her gaze and said, "You saved my life, so I owe you. Now I don't owe you anymore." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. It didn't take long for her to vanish from their fields of vision. After Oblivion Maiden left, Xianxia was about to speak, but Nether Maiden suddenly gazed at him. "Do you think that you're very strong?" Xianxia was at a loss for words. Nether Maiden just stared at Xianxia without blinking, and she said, "Do you know what you are to the Nether Pavilion? You're an ant, a true ant. If they want to kill you, then even the joint forces of all the powers throughout Pine Prefecture won't be able to save you. Yang Yi spoke in a low voice. Then are you saying that only they can do the killing and I can't fight back? Nether Maiden glanced at him with slight disappointment. I'd thought that your character would change upon arriving at the Radiant Dimension, but you're still the same. Let me ask you what would happen to you if I didn't come here today. You would die. Even if you killed Oblivion Maiden, you would die as well. Because once you kill her, then the Nether Pavilion will definitely be shocked. At that time, they'll dispatch experts that you can't resist at all. You're very strong in the eyes of many right now, but you're similarly very weak in the eyes of many. Understand. When she spoke up to this point, Nether Maiden closed her eyes. Yang Yi, even if you refuse to do it for yourself, you still have to think for the sake of your women. What would happen to them if you died? Yang Yi clenched his fists and remained silent. Nether Maiden continued. You can act as you please, but it must be done on the foundation of absolute strength. You can kill members of the Nether Pavilion as well, but why did you have to do it openly? Do you realize that if you did it in the Central Divine Prefecture, then you would have died 100 times by now? It wouldn't just be you who died. Everyone else close to you would be implicated and killed because of you. Yang Yi took a deep breath and said, I was impulsive, and I underestimated the geniuses and powers of the Central Divine Prefecture. Don't worry, I won't do it again. Nether Maiden glanced at him and spoke softly. This is the Radiant Dimension, and it's completely different from Profounder Continent. There aren't just countless saints here. There are even existences above the saint realm. Besides that, there are numerous guests from outside this world. We're just a drop in the universe, and there are too many who are more outstanding and stronger than us. You absolutely can't kill members of the Nether Pavilion in public, because it might bring a calamity down upon you, and it'll even cause the deaths of many people who you care about. I'm still too weak. Yang Yi clenched his fists slowly. He knew that Nether Maiden wasn't wrong at all. He had no knowledge of the Nether Pavilion's true strength, but someone it sent just like that was so formidable. So, it was obvious how terrifying the Nether Pavilion's true strength was. Just as Nether Maiden had said, if they really did dispatch an extraordinary expert for him, then what would he do? What would the Academy, the Sword School, Yu Wushuang, and the others do then? Not to mention an extraordinary expert, the consequences would have been unimaginable if Nether Maiden hadn't rushed over here today. Even then, he'd made Nether Maiden pay such a heavy price. The Radiant Dimension is a unique place. It doesn't just house the extraordinary geniuses from countless lower dimensions. There are the extraordinary geniuses of the Radiant Dimension itself and visitors from outer space. They are from various different worlds and even stellar regions. Every single one of them is a genius. There's no such thing as the strongest in the Radiant Dimension because there's always someone stronger. Even an existence as strong as the Nether Pavilion doesn't dare to act as it pleases in the Central Divine Prefecture. Nether Maiden continued. Yet you have no backing or strength. So, if you still maintain such a character when you head to the Central Divine Prefecture, then you'll drag down everyone you know. Yang Yi remained silent for a long time before he said, No matter what, I have to thank you for your help this time. Don't worry, I'll be careful from now on. She glanced at him, pondered deeply for a moment, and then said, Lu Yuanhao is at the Central Divine Prefecture. That man from the Lu clan who came looking for you before this should have been sent here by him. Even though Lu Yuanhao is only the patriarch of a branch family in the Lu clan, you can't underestimate him at all. The Lu clan is one of the 4 great clans of the Central Divine Prefecture, and their strength isn't something you can go against at all. Lu Yuanhao. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed when he heard this name, because Lu Yuanhao knew that he had the tiny vortex. If Lu Yuanhao exposed the fact that he possessed the tiny vortex, then Yang Yi had no doubt that both the Nether Pavilion and White Deer Academy would come looking for him. At that time, it would truly be impossible for him to escape death. However, Yang Yi felt that Lu Yuanhao would probably not expose such knowledge, because once he did, then Lu Yuanhao would definitely have no chance to obtain the tiny vortex. If he wanted to obtain the tiny vortex, then he had to help Yang Yi keep his secret. Of course, in that way, Lu Yuanhao had a way to threaten him. But it wasn't a huge problem, because he wasn't completely helpless when facing saints now. So long as Lu Yuanhao was selfish and wanted to take the tiny vortex for himself, then Yang Yi felt that he wouldn't be in danger in the near future. In short, he had to become strong, much stronger than he was right now. The battle he had with Oblivion Maiden allowed him to realize that he was actually still very weak. Of course, he was extremely strong when compared to some, and he was strong to the point they could only look up to him. However, if he were to be compared with some geniuses like Oblivion Maiden and Nether Maiden, then he could only be considered as being not bad. He naturally wouldn't compare himself with those who were weaker to him. If he was going to compare himself to someone, he intended to compare himself to those who were more outstanding than him, because only then could he become more and more outstanding. If he were to compare himself to those who were weaker to him, then it would definitely make him become conceited and satisfied with his current accomplishments, and he wouldn't be able to improve anymore. "I'm leaving. Good luck." As soon as she finished speaking, she didn't even give Yang Yi a chance to speak before she flickered off into the distance and vanished from his field of vision. Yang Yi shouted, "Your lifespan." Nether Maiden's voice came from far away. "Just take care of yourself." Yang Yi was speechless. Welkin Wolf Peak. A day had passed, but the forces on the side of Ocean of Clouds Academy were still waiting. Instructor Zhua and the other saints from the academy were standing in confrontation with Welkin Wolf Demon King's group in midair. Meanwhile, the human army was standing in confrontation with the army of demon beasts. All of them were waiting for Yang Yi to arrive. The atmosphere here was heavy and tense, and a battle might break out at any moment. Suddenly, a white-robed old man appeared in the sky. It was an expert of Sky Divine Hall. The white-robed old man glanced at Instructor Zhua's group, and then he said, "Since it has come to this, I won't waste my breath. If both of you continue fighting, then it'll definitely end in destruction for both of you. So, my Sky Divine Hall suggests that you make peace. What do you think?" "Make peace?" Instructor Zhua laughed coldly. "Your Sky Divine Hall really is amazing. Earlier, you were helping Welkin Wolf Mountain Range destroy my academy, yet now that you've failed, you're here to be a mediator? How laughable! My Sky Divine Hall won't allow the destruction of Welkin Wolf Mountain Range." The white-robed old man glanced indifferently at Instructor Zhua and said, "You have to realize that I'm not discussing the matter with all of you. You have no choice but to make peace. Otherwise..." "Otherwise what?" Suddenly, a voice resounded. Everyone here was shocked and turned to look towards the source of the voice. They saw that Yang Yi had suddenly appeared in the distance. The forces from Ocean of Clouds Academy and Ocean of Cloud City instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw Yang Yi alive. Especially Yu Wushuang and Lu Wan'er. Their bodies felt weak, and they almost fell to the ground. They could be said to have been tense at all times while Yang Yi had gone missing, and their tense hearts had finally relaxed when they saw that Yang Yi was fine. Instructor Zhua and the others heaved sighs of relief as well. After Shang Yunqi ignited his soul and detonated himself, Yang Yi could be said to be the Academy's hope. If even he suffered a mishap, then the Academy would be doomed. Fortunately, Yang Yi was still alive. Welkin Wolf Mountain King's face instantly turned gloomy when he saw Yang Yi. He felt both hatred and fear for Yang Yi, and it could be said that if it wasn't for Yang Yi, then the Welkin Wolf clan would have conquered Ocean of Cloud City a long time ago. Besides that, the Welkin Wolf clan wouldn't have lost so many members if it wasn't for Yang Yi. Moreover, he wouldn't have lost his children and wife as well. Now, the Welkin Wolf clan was heavily injured, and it couldn't be considered a platinum rank power anymore. Moreover, if it didn't obtain any fortuitous encounters in the future, then it was very likely for the Welkin Wolf clan to suffer a continuous decline until it hit rock bottom. It was even to the extent that the slightest mistake might cause it to be swallowed by another clan of demon beasts and become that clan's subordinate. Yang Yi could be said to be the reason that the Welkin Wolf clan had fallen to such a state. Since he'd attained the Saint Realm, he'd never had such a strong desire to kill someone, but at the same time he had a trace of fear towards Yang Yi. Yang Ye's strength and natural talent could really be described as terrifying. Of course, what he feared the most was Yang Ye's character. Yang Yi was too insane, too ruthless, and acted as he pleased. Just like this very moment. If Yang Yi were to really go mad and intend to fight Welkin Wolf Mountain Range to the death, it made Welkin Wolf Demon King wonder if he would really have to ignite his soul and detonate himself. He was confident that Instructor Zhua and the others would absolutely not be resolved to die alongside Welkin Wolf Mountain Range. But he didn't have the slightest shred of confidence when facing Yang Yi. Because once that fellow went mad, then he was simply capable of anything. Yang Yi paid no attention to the others here. He just walked over towards the old man, and he spoke while he walked. "Come, tell me what will happen." The white-robed old man gazed at him for quite some time before he said, "You're Yang Yi." Yang Yi laughed coldly and said, "Old man, you have to realize that this is the South, and it's the territory of Ocean of Clouds Academy and the Ancient Sword School. It isn't your Sky Divine Hall's territory. My academy has no need to take your Sky Divine Hall into consideration when it acts here. Understand?" The white-robed old man spoke in a low voice. "Do you really think my Sky Divine Hall wouldn't dare to destroy your academy? Based on the current state that Ocean of Clouds Academy is in, it wouldn't be difficult at all for your Sky Divine Hall to crush it by dispatching all the saints within Sky Divine Hall." Yang Yi continued, "But would you dare to? Sky Divine Hall isn't the only power in the north, and there's the Endless Devil Sect as well. The reason that the Endless Devil Sect hasn't attacked while you interfered in the south was probably because of those fellows from the Central Divine Prefecture. But now that they are either dead or have fled, would the Endless Devil Sect still fear them?" Yang Yi laughed coldly when he spoke up to this point. "Would your Sky Divine Hall dare to disregard the Endless Devil Sect once you've lost the support of those fellows from the Central Divine Prefecture?" The white-robed old man gazed at Yang Yi for a long time, and then he said, "So long as we are willing to pay a certain price, then destroying your academy wouldn't be difficult at all." Yang Yi replied, "Then allow me to tell you right now, we won't make peace. So, you can pay that price now." The white-robed old man gazed at Yang Yi for a long time, and then he gazed at Instructor Zhua. Instructor Zhua spoke coldly. "He's the dean of the academy now, so he makes the decisions." The white-robed old man's face turned gloomy. "Are you really that desperate to be annihilated?" At the same time, Yang Yi suddenly glanced at Qing and said, "Protect Wushuang and Wanner." When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Wushuang and continued, "Remember that if Welkin Wolf Demon King dares to attack, then immediately order our forces to attack Welkin Wolf City. Slaughter every living being in the city once you breach it. Don't leave anyone alive." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi flipped his palm, and yellow springs appeared in his grasp. After that, he transformed into a ray of brilliant light that shot towards the white-robed old man. The white-robed old man and Welkin Wolf Demon King's faces changed when they saw Yang Yi attack. It wasn't too shocking for Welkin Wolf Demon King because he had quite a good understanding of that madman Xianxia's character. When he heard the white-robed old man threaten Yang Yi repeatedly, he knew that madman would definitely attack. Sure enough, it was as he'd expected. However, he hadn't expected that Yang Yi would actually threaten him with Welkin Wolf City. Should I attack or should I not? Welkin Wolf Demon King was quite conflicted. If he attacked, then Yang Yi would definitely do as he'd said. At that time, unless he ignited his soul and detonated himself, the demon beasts in the city would definitely be annihilated. Because the forces of Welkin Wolf City were far inferior to the human army now. But if he didn't attack, then how would he face Sky Divine Hall? Welkin Wolf Demon King pondered deeply for a long time, and he decided not to attack in the end. Because the white-robed old man was a saint at any rate, but Yang Yi was only a half-saint. So, there was really no need for him to lend a hand. Besides that, it was pointless even if he did. Because once he did try to do anything, Instructor Zhua and the others would definitely attack as well. At that time, things would have truly gone out of hand. Yang Yi was a madman, but he was no madman. The white-robed old man was shocked when Yang Yi attacked because he hadn't expected that Yang Yi would actually dare to attack him. After all, Yang Yi was just a half-saint. He wouldn't be surprised if he spoke to Elder Mo, who'd just returned to Sky Divine Hall before he left. Unfortunately, he hadn't. So, he was utterly unaware that Yang Yi had already killed a saint. The white-robed old man's face fell, and he was about to attack, but his eyes suddenly opened wide while his hairs stood on end. Because Yang Ye's speed had suddenly risen by more than 10 times. Bang! The white-robed old man swiftly slapped his palms forward at the critical moment, and a terrifying aura and wave of fiery red energy surged out from within him like the tide before instantly enveloping both Yang Yi and his attack. Yu Wushuang and the others' expressions changed when they witnessed this scene, and she clenched her fists tightly while worry filled her eyes. OM! Suddenly, numerous sword howls resounded in the sky as rays of light flashed incessantly through the fiery red wave of energy. Every single ray of light would slice open a gap within the wave of energy, and it only took a few breaths of time for the wave of energy to be sliced into bits. Slash! Yang Ye's furious howl resounded in the sky, and then a ray of sword energy tore through the sky and descended towards the old man. Moreover, the powerful force it carried caused cracks to start appearing in the space behind the old man. There was shock in the old man's eyes because he hadn't expected Yang Yi to actually be so strong. Not only was Yang Ye's sword intent at the void rank, Yang Yi even possessed the laws of speed. Most importantly, Yang Yi was covered in divine rank treasures. This made his battle with Yang Yi extremely aggrieving. Because Yang Yi could completely disregard his defenses in battle while wearing divine rank armor, and Yang Yi fought with the intent of suffering a blow from him in order to land one on him as well. At this moment, Yang Ye's sword had arrived before the old man, so he didn't have the time to think. He waved his right hand and a black will flashed forward and slammed against Yang Ye's sword. OM! A sharp and ear-piercing explosion resounded from the point of collision, and then the low-grade divine rank will actually started to crack apart. The old man's eyelids twitched at the sight of this, and he was about to summon the black will back to him. Meanwhile, Yang Yi raised his sword and struck the wheel, and an explosion resounded as the black wheel was blasted back to the old man. At this moment, the black wheel was covered in cracks, and it seemed like it would shatter at any moment. The white-robed old man's heart simply felt like it was bleeding. Die! As soon as Yang Yi spoke, he took yellow springs in both hands and swung it at the old man. Presently, he didn't have to rely on surprise attacks to fight saints. A wisp of ferocity flashed through the old man's eyes when he saw Yang Yi launch another attack at him, and he unfurled his fist and swung it lightly in Yang Ye's direction. Dark blue flames instantly appeared on his palm and swept towards Yang Yi. Bang! Yang Ye's figure stopped on the spot because his sword had been obstructed by the old man's flaming palm. Moreover, a wave of energy erupted from the point of collision and instantly swept throughout the sky. Die! The old man roared with rage, and the flames on his palm instantly raged and transformed into an ocean of flames that enveloped the entire sky. Suddenly, a myriad of rays of light erupted from within the ocean of flames, and they minced the ocean of flames into bits. A shrill cry resounded from within the ocean of flames. It was the white-robed old man's voice. Welkin Wolf Demon King and the others revealed grim expressions, and they were ready to act at any moment. Even though they didn't want to go down with Ocean of Clouds Academy, they would be offending Sky Divine Hall if they didn't lend a hand at such a moment. Presently, Welkin Wolf Mountain Range truly couldn't afford to offend a colossus like Sky Divine Hall. The profound energy within Instructor Zhua and the others surged as well, and they were ready to act at any moment. Meanwhile, the ocean of flames in the sky vanished, and rays of light were still crisscrossing through the sky. Every single ray of light was capable of slicing space apart with ease, and it was a truly horrifying sight. At this moment, they noticed to their shock that the white-robed old man had lost an arm. Moreover, besides his vital points, every other place throughout his body was covered in extremely fine needle holes. Blood was surging out incessantly from within the old man. Bang! The old man was blasted over 500 m back by the impact from Yang Ye's sword. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was about to follow up with another attack when the old man suddenly turned around, tore space open there, and vanished before everyone's eyes. He'd fled. At this moment, Welkin Wolf Demon King's face was unsightly to the extreme. After all, He'd never imagined that a saint of Sky Divine Hall would have actually fled as well. The old man had even discarded his dignity as a saint. Yang Yi was slightly stunned, but he wasn't very surprised, because his equipment had caused the old man to be almost constantly on the defensive since the battle between them began. If he didn't choose to flee under such circumstances, then the old man would have no choice but to wait for death to arrive. Unfortunately, the old man was too fast, so it was impossible for Yang Yi to go after the old man. Yang Yi shook his head, withdrew his gaze, and then gazed at Welkin Wolf Demon King. He raised his right hand slowly as if he was about to attack. Welkin Wolf Demon King and the others clenched their fists tightly when they witnessed this scene, and there was even a wisp of viciousness and resolve in Welkin Wolf Demon King's eyes, because he knew Yang Ye's character well. So he didn't hesitate at all. He started to emanate threads of flames from within him, and he was about to ignite his soul. Instructor Zhua and the others gazed at Yang Yi with solemn expressions on their faces. Is that kid going to do it for real? Suddenly, Yang Yi said, Welkin Wolf Demon King, why are you getting so tense? I was just wiping off my sweat. As he spoke, he raised his right hand and wiped off the sweat on his face. Everyone here was rendered speechless by this scene. He was just wiping off his sweat? Instructor Zhua and the others were quite stunned when they heard him, and then they heaved sighs of relief in their hearts. If Yang Yi really were to attack in such a situation, then Welkin Wolf Demon King and the others would definitely ignite their souls. At that time, Instructor Zhua and the others would definitely have no choice but to ignite their souls against Welkin Wolf Demon King and the other saints of the Welkin Wolf clan. So, Ocean of Clouds Academy and the Welkin Wolf clan would truly be perishing together once that happened. Even though they didn't fear igniting their souls and were prepared to do so, their sacrifice would be meaningless under such circumstances. Because once 8 saints were to ignite their souls and fight to the death, then both the Welkin Wolf clan and Ocean of Clouds Academy's forces wouldn't be able to survive. Fortunately, Yang Yi didn't disappoint them, and he didn't act impulsively at a time like this. Welkin Wolf Demon King heaved a sigh of relief as well. While he was ready to ignite his soul at any moment, he didn't want to do it if it was avoidable. It wasn't because he feared death. It was because he didn't want his Welkin Wolf clan to vanish from Pine Prefecture. Fortunately, that madman Yang Yi was still rational. The Welkin Wolf clan doesn't have to be annihilated, but I have 3 conditions. Meanwhile, Yang Yi gazed at Welkin Wolf Demon King and said, Condition number 1. The Welkin Wolf clan must compensate Ocean of Clouds Academy with 1 billion extreme-grade energy stones. The second condition, the Welkin Wolf clan must leave Welkin Wolf Mountain Range. The third and final condition, you, Welkin Wolf Demon King, must swear on your soul that you won't go against Ocean of Clouds Academy from today onwards. Agree, and your clan can survive. Refuse, and your clan will perish. You're going too far. Ferocity instantly covered Welkin Wolf Demon King's face. Yang Yi, don't you think that my Welkin Wolf clan fears you? If you force us to a corner, then we'll just take you down with us. Yang Yi stared Welkin Wolf Demon King in the eyes. Then you can ignite your soul right now. Welkin Wolf Demon King's face was horrifyingly fierce. The energy within him was surging madly, and he seemed like he would explode at any moment. Should he take Ocean of Clouds Academy down with him? Or should he agree to Yang Ye's conditions? Welkin Wolf Demon King was conflicted. Meanwhile, Yu Wushuang suddenly walked over to Yang Ye's side. She gazed at Welkin Wolf Mountain King's side and said, Welkin Wolf Mountain Wing, those conditions are actually not bad to your clan. It'll just cause you to suffer some losses. If 1 billion extreme-grade energy stones are converted into inner cores, then while it's quite a large number to your Welkin Wolf clan, it isn't to the extent of making your clan go broke. As for the second condition, let me ask you something instead. With the current strength that your Welkin Wolf clan possesses, would you really dare to continue staying right outside our academy even if we didn't raise such a condition? Yu Wushuang paused for a moment when she spoke up to this point. As for the third condition, let me ask you something. Welkin Wolf Demon King, would you really dare to act against our academy while your clan is in such a state? Welkin Wolf Demon King, let me be honest. Your clan has been abandoned, it has been used and abandoned. If I were you, I would leave. I would lead my clan to find another place to stay, avoid the wars in the prefecture, and recuperate. Your Welkin Wolf clan still has a chance to rise up again while you're still alive, but it would never be able to hold its head up high again if you're gone. Welkin Wolf Demon King's expression eased up slightly when he heard Yu Wushuang, but he was still visibly struggling to come to a decision. Yu Wushuang continued, Welkin Wolf Demon King, I know that you have the courage to ignite your soul, but have you thought about whether it's worth it? It isn't. It isn't worth it at all. Not only will you die, you'll take your entire clan with you. Doing that will only benefit the people who were using you like Sky Divine Hall. Right? Welkin Wolf Demon King spoke in a low voice. This is our home. Yu Wushuang added, you can never hope of recuperating if you stay here, because we wouldn't allow it. It isn't just us. If those who used you refuse to let my academy survive, then they'll definitely come looking for you again and continue using you. At that time, would you dare to refuse with the current strength you possess? But if you don't refuse it, you'll be used again and made into cannon fodder. Right? Welkin Wolf Mountain King fell silent. Yu Wushuang didn't speak another word. Both of them just fell silent. Regardless of whether it was Instructor Zhua and the others, or the demon beasts on Welkin Wolf Demon King's side, all of them had solemn expressions on their faces. Because whether they would fight until both sides are destroyed or stop fighting was entirely up to Welkin Wolf Demon King. The only person here who remained calm was Xianxia. Actually, he really wanted to put an end to all future troubles. But it was clearly impossible because he had to consider the safety of everyone here. If he chose to fight, then countless would die because of his decision, and that included Instructor Zhua and the others. Moreover, Ocean of Clouds Academy really did need to recuperate, and that was why he'd raised such conditions. He knew what his own flaws were, and he knew that he wasn't suited to be a leader. Because a leader would consider too many things, and that was like a shackle to him. The heart of a sword cultivator shouldn't be shackled. But it couldn't be helped. He had to step forward and assume such responsibility right now. Moreover, until Ocean of Clouds Academy could find someone suitable, he had to continue holding this responsibility. Not for anything else but for Shang Yunxi. Even though he didn't know why Shang Yunxi had ignited his soul and detonated himself so resolutely, Xianxia knew that Ocean of Clouds Academy and he, Xianxia, would have been destroyed if it wasn't for Shang Yunxi's sacrifice. After all, the arrival of 4 more saints was sufficient to obliterate their forces. Time passed slowly while the atmosphere here grew more and more oppressive to the point that it was suffocating. A long time passed before Welkin Wolf Demon King gazed at Xianxia. Xianxia, you're one. Actually, it had been a competition of ruthlessness. If he could allow himself to be that ruthless, then both sides would have been obliterated in battle. But the problem was that he'd lost to Xianxia. To a certain extent, Xianxia was forcing him to ignite his soul and detonate himself when Xianxia raised those conditions. Why did Xianxia dare to do that? Because Xianxia was ruthless, and he was bold. Xianxia was clearly aware that both sides would be obliterated if he and the others were to ignite their souls and detonate themselves, but Xianxia still dared to be so overbearing. That was the most terrifying part about Xianxia. If one tried to make it sound nice, then he was bold, ruthless, and daring. But if one were to be honest, he was a madman who ignored the consequences. But it just so happened that it made Welkin Wolf Demon King lose. Because he was still sensible and wasn't ruthless enough. Instructor Zhua and the others truly heaved sighs of relief when they heard Welkin Wolf Demon King. After all, Welkin Wolf Demon King's compromise means that both sides didn't have to perish together. Moreover, Ocean of Clouds Academy would obtain a huge amount of compensation and the Welkin Wolf clan's territory. Most importantly, the Academy would have no further threats residing in its vicinity from now on. Even then, everyone here wasn't able to arouse a shred of happiness within them, because Shang Yunxi was gone. Xianxia, the day will come when you meet a miserable end. It'll definitely come. Welkin Wolf Demon King stared fixedly at Xianxia and said, all bloodthirsty people throughout the annals of history have never been able to live for long. 1 billion extreme-grade energy stones. Not a single one less. If the Welkin Wolf clan still remains on this mountain range in 3 days from now, then I'll kill every single wolf I see. Xianxia's figure vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. Welkin Wolf Demon King just gazed at where Xiangxia stood earlier for a long time. In the end, he turned around and vanished with the other saints. A day later, the mountain range quaked as countless wolves left. Meanwhile, Ocean of Cloud City was seething with excitement and cheers, and their voices shot into the sky. Ocean of Cloud City had won, and it represented that they could live. Most importantly, Xianxia had promised that the Academy wouldn't take a single inner core from the dead demon beasts. Besides that, Xianxia had given him a string of other promises, and they would be fulfilled as well. They weren't worried that Xianxia would go back on his word because they had absolute faith in him. The city governor's estate of Ocean of Cloud City. Yu Wushuang spoke slowly within the hall. Welkin Wolf Demon King sent over 1 million inner cores to us. The weakest amongst them is at the Monarch realm, while there are over 10,000 at the Half-Saint realm. I've counted them and converted them to extreme-grade energy stones. They are valued at no less than 1 billion extreme-grade energy stones. Besides that, the wolves of the Welkin Wolf clan have started to leave since yesterday, and I assume that they'll be able to retreat completely by the morning. Xianxia was seated on the seat of the host, and Instructor Zhua and the other saints were seated by Xianxia's side. Shang Qingying was here as well. Xianxia nodded lightly and said, "Wushuang, you make arrangements for those inner cores, right? From now onwards, you and Miss Shang will be the vice deans of the Academy, and you'll manage all internal affairs of the Academy and city." When he spoke up to this point, Xianxia gazed at Instructor Zhua and the others. "Senior, what do all of you think?" Instructor Zhua glanced at Yu Wushuang and Shang Qingying before he nodded lightly. "Wushuang's very capable, and she's a suitable choice. As for little girl Shang, she knows the Academy very well. So, they'll definitely be able to manage the Academy and city well." He glanced at Xianxia when he spoke up to this point and said, "You're the dean now, so you're fully able to make all of these trivial decisions on your own." Xianxia asked, "Senior, do you think I'm suited to be the dean?" Instructor Zhua shook his head lightly. "You aren't. I understand what you're trying to say, but only you can truly save our Academy." Xianxia was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Instructor Zhua took a deep breath. "Do you know why Brother Shang detonated himself?" Xianxia replied, "That's exactly what puzzled me." Instructor Zhua explained solemnly, "It was because those 4 were from White Deer Academy." Xianxia frowned. "White Deer Academy wants to crush our Academy?" Instructor Zhua shook his head and said, "We would have ceased to exist if White Deer Academy wanted to destroy us. There are 2 factions in White Deer Academy, the Law faction and the Scholarly faction. The Law faction intends to govern the Academy through laws, and everything in the Academy would be done according to its rules. The Scholarly faction stresses upon benevolence, and it seeks to appeal to a person before considering the rules and laws. It's the Law faction which desires to crush our Academy because the Dean violated the rules of White Deer Academy all those years ago. In their opinion, his actions of establishing Ocean of Clouds Academy is like betrayal of White Deer Academy." Instructor Zhua paused for a moment when he spoke up to this point, and he spoke solemnly. "But our Academy has been able to exist until now because of the Scholarly faction. Because the Scholarly faction thinks that we should be given a chance, and it's the competition in White Deer Academy. So long as someone from our Academy is able to be ranked in the top 10 of the competition, then we'll be allowed to return to the Central Divine Prefecture and belong to White Deer Academy. That was why the Dean has been constantly sending students to participate in White Deer Academy's competition all these years, because we'll only be truly safe by returning to White Deer Academy." Xianxia spoke solemnly. "Those fellows who came this time were from the Law faction, right?" Instructor Zhua nodded. "They suffered a loss this time, so they definitely won't let the matter rest. I presume that it won't take long for them to send someone else. Moreover, it'll definitely be a supreme expert. Perhaps it might even be no less than 10 saints." Xianxia spoke in an extremely serious manner. "Can I quit? 10 saints. That was no joke. The Academy only had 4 saints now, and all of them were heavily injured. Under such circumstances, the academy didn't have the slightest chance to win. In other words, he, the dean of the academy, might be killed at any moment. Instructor Zhuo fell silent for a long time upon hearing Yang Yi, and then he said, "You can quit if you want. Just tell it to Brother Shang. We won't object if he agrees." The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched, and quite some time passed before he laughed bitterly. "Fine, you win. But the situation we're facing now is really quite bad. Sky Divine Hall will definitely not spare us, and they'll definitely attack us if they have the chance. As for the Tao Order, it'll definitely not let the matter rest because of me. Coupled with the law faction of White Deer Academy, we can be said to be at risk of annihilation at any time." Instructor Zhuo pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "You're the dean, so you make the decisions." Yang Ye's face darkened. That damnable old man is being so shameless. Meanwhile, Yu Wushuang spoke. "Actually, we aren't in a hopeless situation yet." Yang Yi asked, "What do you mean?" She pondered deeply for a moment and said, "The law faction of White Deer Academy wants to crush us, and as those who oppose them, the scholarly faction would definitely not allow them to succeed. If the scholarly faction allowed it, then they wouldn't have snuck to Pine Prefecture and played such tricks. They would have openly dispatched experts to obliterate us. If you intend to rely on the scholarly faction, then you can discard that thought." Instructor Zhuo spoke solemnly. "They are willing to give us a chance, but we haven't been able to grasp that opportunity throughout these years. So, many of them are actually disappointed in us, and they are so disappointed that they've stopped to pay attention to us. Moreover, they would definitely not act against the law faction even if they knew that the law faction had acted against us, because we have no value to them, nor is fighting the law faction for us worth it to them. Senior, I've actually guessed all of that." Yu Wushuang continued. "I'm not talking about relying on the scholarly faction. At the very least, we can't rely on the scholarly faction for now, nor are we able to." Instructor Zhuo said, "Be frank." Yu Wushuang nodded. "The Endless Devil Sect and Sky Divine Hall are sworn enemies. However, its sworn enemy, the Endless Devil Sect, didn't show any signs of movement when a huge number of experts left Sky Divine Hall to attack us. Don't you think that it's strange?" Yang Yi frowned. "You're saying that the Endless Devil Sect might have been warned not to do anything by the law faction? It's not a possibility, it's certain." Yu Wushuang continued. "Sky Divine Hall had dared to openly dispatch its elites here. That proved they were sure that the Endless Devil Sect wouldn't dare to attack them. But they don't have the strength to make the Endless Devil Sect dare not attack them. So, the only explanation is that the law faction of White Deer Academy interfered." A grin curled up on the corners of Yu Wushuang's mouth when she spoke up to this point. "Just think about it. If you were the Endless Devil Sect, then would you be willing to accept that?" "I wouldn't." Instructor Zhuo spoke solemnly. "However, would they dare to fight back against the law faction of White Deer Academy? Even though it doesn't represent the entirety of White Deer Academy, their strength still isn't something that a tiny sect like the Endless Devil Sect can resist." "Senior, you're absolutely right." Yu Wushuang smiled. "However, if you were the sect master of the Endless Devil Sect, would you just watch as Sky Divine Hall continued to grow stronger? Would you be willing to be controlled by the law faction or even threatened by them? So long as there's unwillingness and resentment in their hearts, then we would have a chance." Instructor Zhuo asked, "To form an alliance with the Endless Devil Sect?" Yu Wushuang nodded and said, "Regardless of whether it's our academy or the Endless Devil Sect, we're unable to resist the law faction on our own. Not to mention that it has the Python Clan, Steel Ape Clan, and Sky Divine Hall obeying its commands. The only way to go against them is to join forces. In that way, we would still have a chance at survival." Instructor Zhuo spoke in a low voice. "I'll head to the Endless Devil Sect." Yu Wushuang shook her head and said, "We can't go to them." Instructor Zhuo was puzzled. "Why?" She answered, "Because if we are to take the initiative, then we'll fall into a passive position while facing them. We have to wait for them to come looking for us." Instructor Zhuo said, "What if they don't come?" She spoke with absolute certainty. Unless the endless devil sex master is good for nothing, they'll definitely send someone to meet us. Instructor Zhuo gazed at her for a long time before he grinned. Little girl, you really aren't bad at all. She nodded slightly in a neither humble or proud manner. What about the Tao Order? Instructor Zhuo continued. We killed one of their saints and Qing Daofu. Based on the way they do things, the Tao Order will definitely not let the matter rest. They have 3 choices, she answered solemnly. The first is to disregard everything and fight us to the death. The second choice is to let bygones be bygones, make peace with us, and work together once more. The third choice is to do nothing, wait for an opportunity, and strike a killing blow at a critical period. Instructor Zhuo said, they might choose the third option. Yu Wushuang nodded in response. So, we absolutely can't give them a chance to do that. So long as we form an alliance with the Endless Devil Sect and the Ancient Sword School, then they wouldn't dare act against us at all. Unless they choose to side with Sky Divine Hall. But we have no need to fear them even if they do side with Sky Divine Hall. Because Sky Divine Hall is too far away from here. Coupled with the fact that we have the Endless Devil Sect to help us, the Sky Divine Hall wouldn't be able to help them at all. Instructors returned to look at Yang Yi and asked, what do you think? Yang Yi shook his head slightly and said, we'll do as Wushuang said. Instructor Zhuo nodded and said, then we'll wait for the Endless Devil Sect's arrival. Before long, Instructor Zhuo, Yu Wushuang, and the others left the hall, and only Yang Yi and Shang Qingying remained here. Yang Yi gazed at her for a long time and said, I'm not really good at consoling others. All I want to say is that if you want to take revenge, then you have to work hard on becoming stronger. Yang Yi turned around and walked away once he finished speaking. Shang Qingying suddenly said, you'll be heading to the Central Divine Prefecture to participate in the competition, right? Yang Yi stopped and said, even though I don't feel any connection to the old man, I feel that White Deer Academy has to give us an explanation for his death. Yang Yi walked out of the hall once he finished speaking. Shang Qingying clenched her fists as she stood there in the hall, and a long time passed before she said, they have to give us an explanation. They must give me an explanation. After he returned to Cloud Ocean Pavilion, Yang Yi locked himself within his room. Qing and Hong were standing before him, and Hong was here because he'd asked Qing to bring her here. Yang Yi glanced at Hong, and the latter glared at him before moving her gaze away. Obviously, she was still angry at him for not giving her a violet crystal that day. Yang Yi disregarded her and just looked directly at Qing. I can help her attain the Saint Realm, but I have the same conditions as before. She must help me 3 times. I don't like to negotiate. Agree and I'll give her a violet crystal right now. Refuse and she can leave right now. She agrees. Qing hurriedly said, don't worry. Both she and I won't go back on our word. I can guarantee that. Yang Yi nodded and flicked a violet crystal over to Qing. Hong's gaze instantly descended upon it, and there was a trace of green in her eyes. Yang Yi suddenly asked, you're from the Python clan? Qing nodded and said, but don't worry, we have no connection to the Python clan anymore, because we've been expelled from the clan by its current patriarch. If it wasn't for that, we sisters wouldn't have gone to such a remote place to hide. Yang Yi was puzzled. Expelled? Why? Qing pondered deeply for a moment before she explained. My father was the past patriarch of the Python clan, but both of us hadn't attained the Saint Realm before he fell. It's utterly impossible for the Python clan to let a weakling assume the position of patriarch, so it was seized by my uncle. He'd intended to kill us sisters, but many saints in the clan used to be my father's subordinates, and they didn't allow him to do so. So, he didn't dare to kill us in the end and could only expel us. So that's what happened. Yang Yi nodded. He remained silent for a long time before he suddenly said, do you want to take it back from your uncle? Both of them were slightly stunned, and then excitement surged within their eyes as Qing spoke in a trembling voice. You're willing to help us? If it was in the past, she would naturally not dare to hold any hopes. But now, Yang Yi was the Dean of Ocean of Clouds Academy and a disciple of the Ancient Sword School. He had the backing of the saints from both powers. If the saints of both powers were included, then she did have the chance to reclaim control over the Python clan. "I can try," said Xianxia. If he were to help them reclaim power over the Python clan, then it would definitely be a good thing for the academy, because it would be equivalent to having one less formidable enemy and one more ally. Qing guaranteed, "We'll definitely repay you if you help us." Xianxia said, "We'll talk about that in the future. The important matter at hand is for your sister to attain the Saint Realm. We'll have a higher chance at success once she has attained the Saint Realm as well." Qing nodded and said, "You're right. I'll take her to cultivate and charge into the Saint Realm right now." Qing took Hong's hand and vanished on the spot. "How impatient!" Xianxia shook his head slightly, and then he waved his right hand. Zhu Yuan's corpse appeared in front of him. A true Saint Realm sword servant. Xianxia started to refine Zhu Yuan's corpse once he finished speaking. What happened with Oblivion Maiden and Shang Yunqi caused Xianxia to sense an unprecedented feeling of danger. Especially what happened to Shang Yunqi. Even someone as strong as Shang Yunqi had no choice but to ignite his soul and detonate himself when facing White Deer Academy. And it clearly displayed how formidable White Deer Academy was. Besides that, there was the Nether Pavilion. Someone it casually sent had almost killed him, so would he even have a chance at survival if they acted a little more seriously? Everything that happened this time allowed Xianxia to realize a fact, a very cruel fact. He was still very weak, extremely weak. It wasn't a problem if a person was weak. It was a problem if that person didn't realize his own weakness and even thought that he was extremely strong. Such a person would definitely not live for long. Xianxia was naturally not a person like that. He had a very extreme character, but he wasn't obstinate. So long as there was a problem in him and it was a bad problem, then he would be willing to work on it and change it. The strength of a single person was limited in the end, just like this very moment. Even if he attained the Saint Realm or the realm above it, he would absolutely be incapable of resisting the entire Sky Divine Hall, let alone White Deer Academy and the Nether Pavilion. If he wanted to go against Sky Divine Hall to rescue in Nanjing and Muhanshan, then his only option was to form a power of his own or form an alliance between numerous powers. That was why he'd suddenly changed his mind and intended to help Hong attain the Saint Realm, and it was also why he'd agreed to help Qing and Hong retake control of the Python clan. He didn't just have to work hard on making himself stronger, he had to gather even more experts. In the blink of an eye, a day passed. After working arduously for an entire day and night without stop, Zhu Yuan had finally been refined into a sword servant. It was naturally difficult to refine a true Saint Realm sword servant. Fortunately, he'd been able to persist through it. After he completed the refinement of Zhu Yuan's corpse, he started to cultivate like a madman. The half-Saint Realm was far insufficient to him, and he had to attain the Saint Realm as soon as possible. Once one attained the half-Saint Realm, every single advancement was definitely extremely difficult. But it wasn't that difficult for Xianxia because he had Snowy. With Snowy there to help him, he didn't have to worry about profound energy at all. And under the condition that he had sufficient profound energy, charging into the ranks of mid-rank half-saints was much easier. He'd thought about trying to access the Primordial Pagoda, but he'd still failed. The Primordial Pagoda had absorbed an incalculable amount of spirit energy, but it still showed no signs of recovering. So, he had no choice but to give up in order to avoid wasting profound energy. He'd thought that he only had to provide sufficient profound energy and the Primordial Pagoda would recover. Obviously, he was mistaken. What needed to be done to restore the Primordial Pagoda? That question had become the biggest problem that plagued Xianxia. The Primordial Pagoda wasn't just related to the improvement of his strength. Su Qingshi and the others were within it as well. Even though he knew that they were safe in there, he still couldn't rest at ease while they stayed in there for extended periods. Even though he wanted to restore the Primordial Pagoda, he had no choice but to put it aside. Presently, the most important matter at hand was to work hard at improving his strength. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed by. Ocean of Cloud City had undergone tremendous changes during this period where Xianxia had been in closed-door cultivation. Xianxia had promised the residents of the city that so long as they stayed behind to defend the city, then the academy would protect their descendants and even start ordinary classes to nurture those descendants of theirs. Now, Yu Wushuang had established those ordinary classes throughout the city and academy, and there were over 1,000 of them. Moreover, they were still increasing in number. Countless students who didn't possess sufficient natural talent to earn a place in the academy were able to join the academy to learn, and they received the guidance of the instructors which were appointed by the academy. Perhaps many of them would still be unable to enter the actual academy, but many of them were still extremely satisfied with this, because they had a chance at the very least, and it was a form of hope to them. Moreover, the Cultivation Technique Department, Combat Technique Department, and various other parts of the academy which were only open to students of the academy were now open to all. Of course, there were conditions. They had to utilize their contribution points. The contribution points could be obtained through numerous methods like completing the assignments of the academy, exchanging treasures, and so on and so forth. In short, Ocean of Cloud City could be said to be truly under the academy's control now. Moreover, Yu Wushuang's string of plans and arrangements had caused the independent cultivators who were once incapable of cooperating with each other to gradually become united. Moreover, most of those independent cultivators had become members of the city guard that was directly under the academy's control. As for those independent cultivators and clans that didn't join the academy, there was still a web of relationships between them and the academy. To put it in simple terms, if the academy was gone, then everything they gained would be gone as well. So, at this moment, no one in the entire city would dare to disobey an order from the academy. Benefits. Yu Wushuang had utilized exactly that to bind everyone in the city with the academy. They would all rise together or die together. In the past, the academy stood high above, and countless people looked up to it. Yet now, the academy had fully assimilated itself with the world around it. In the beginning, there were naturally some who were unaccustomed to such a change, and they rejected it. But it didn't take long for these voices of objection to vanish. Because Yu Wushuang had obtained Yang Ye's support. As Yang Yi had put it, everything Yu Wushuang did was what he wanted. Even though Yu Wushuang had monstrous abilities when it came to management and strategy, she was weak in the end. So, it was unavoidable for those with strength to look down on her. But once they heard Yang Yi, not a single person dared to look down on that young girl. Besides her own ability, there was another important reason, and it was that Yang Yi was standing behind her. In the hearts of everyone throughout the city and the academy, Yang Ye's influence and prestige could be said to have surpassed Instructor Zhua and the other saints. After all, he was the first half-saint in the history of Pine Prefecture that was able to kill a saint. In Yang Ye's room, Yang Yi sat cross-legged on the ground while his aura grew stronger and stronger. In the beginning, his aura seeped out from within him and caused the entire room to tremble. But it didn't take long for it to gradually calm down. The violet mink and Snowy were in front of Yang Yi. Both the little fellows were staring at Yang Yi without blinking. They'd been accompanying Yang Yi as he cultivated throughout this period. The violet mink had intended to take Snowy outside with her, but Yang Yi had refused. Regardless of whether it was Zir or Snowy, it was truly too easy for them to bring trouble upon themselves. Especially Snowy, it was very likely for extremely serious problems to arise once she went outside. She was a sprite king. Moreover, she was one who could create violet crystals. If others were to find out about her, then it would cause inestimable amounts of trouble. Meanwhile, Snowy raised her claw and pointed it at Yang Yi, and then she started gesturing as if she was saying something. The violet mink shook her head and started doing the same. Just like that, the two little fellows were gesturing at each other in succession. One day later, huff! Yang Yi suddenly let out a huge breath of air and slowly opened his eyes. As soon as he did, the violet mink flew over to his right shoulder and started rubbing her head incessantly against Yang Ye's face. Snowy hesitated for a moment, and then she flew over to Yang Ye's left shoulder, copied what the violet mink was doing, and started rubbing her head against Yang Ye's face. Slap! The violet mink suddenly raised her little claw and slapped Snowy on the head. Snowy raised her head to gaze at the violet mink, and she saw the violet mink glaring at her. After that, Zir pointed at Yang Yi, pointed at herself, and seemed to be saying that only she could do that. Snowy glanced at Yang Yi, glanced at the violet mink, and then nodded to the violet mink while the violet mink glared at her. However, she was still holding on to Yang Ye's neck, and even rubbed her head against his face a few times. Obviously, while she'd nodded, she didn't know what the violet mink really meant. The violet mink was furious when she witnessed this scene. She raised her claw and was about to smack Snowy on the head again. However, Yang Yi suddenly stretched out his hands and took both of them in his arms. He kissed both the little fellows on their faces and smiled. "It's really nice to see both of you as soon as I open my eyes." He really liked such a calm life, but he knew that it wouldn't last. The violet mink's face instantly flushed red when Yang Yi kissed her, and she glared at him with embarrassment before transforming into a ray of violet light that entered the space between his upper garments. Snowy was stunned for a moment, and then she copied what the violet mink had done. She glared at Yang Yi, and then transformed into a ray of white light that entered the space between his upper garments as well. It was naturally impossible for both of them to reside there, but the violet mink had opened up a small and mobile pocket of space there, and that was where she and Snowy usually resided. Yang Yi chuckled when he saw them enter the pocket of space there, and then he stood up and stretched his body. In an instant, cracking sounds resounded throughout his body. "I'm a mid-rank half-saint now, so the high rank of the half-saint realm isn't far away." Yang Yi grinned. After a month of bitter cultivation, he'd finally advanced into the mid-rank of the half-saint realm. The improvement of his cultivation had brought great benefits to all aspects of his strength, especially the sword domain because its strength was entirely dependent on his own cultivation. Suddenly, a voice resounded from outside. "It's just the mid-rank of the half-saint realm. Stop thinking so highly of yourself. Come out here and let me see the first genius of our Pine Prefecture that was able to kill a saint while at the half-saint realm." Yang Ye's pupils constricted slightly when he heard this, because he'd actually not noticed that someone was outside the door, and he still wasn't able to notice that person's presence. Based on that fellow's voice, it's a young man. Who is it? Lu Qianxiao?